Welcome to Podcast for Fun. This is the show where we dive into the passion, the process, and the journeys of creative storytellers as they bring their stories to life. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are joined by a talented writer, artist, comic creator, Terry Moore. Thank you so much for being here, Terry.
I'm glad to be here, Sophia. Thank you for having me.
So, let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your career.
For the last almost 30 years, at least, I guess, I've been writing and drawing my own comic books as an indie creator. On the side, I did work for the bigger companies too, but mostly it was just all about my own books. Um, I've had a long-running series called Strangers in Paradise. And then that was followed by a number of other books. So I've been making books nonstop the whole time. I have a lot of books now.
What was like the first book you've ever written?
Ooh. Well, in the comic book industry, it would be Strangers in Paradise. Um, and I did that as a series put out a new issue every 6 weeks for 12 years. So ended up being like 107 issues long. Um, so yeah, that kept me really busy for a whole decade.
Oh my God. How did you come up with the idea for the story?
I have spent time, I've thought about that. How did I come up with that one, for instance?
Mm.
And what happened was I had a lot of, you notice things and they stick with you. Like you see a news article about something you've never seen before, and then you find yourself 3 years later, you're still thinking about it. And so it's things like that that really stick with you. And you begin to think like, what if? And then suddenly you turn it into your own version. So I had a lot of different things like that. I had like 4 or 5 or 6 really unique things that I was thinking about. And I realized if I put them all together, I would have one story that would have a lot of angles to it. I used to think you get one idea, you make a story about that. But when I was a musician in my 20s, I took a demo tape to a studio producer and he played a little bit of 10 songs. And he said, "You know what, kid? You have one good idea in each song and they're all just average. Why don't you take all your ideas and make one great song?" And nobody had ever said that to me before. I thought you get one idea, you write a song about it. And so when it was my turn, I got a chance to do a comic book. I did the same thing. I thought, I have one good idea for a comic. What if I put 4 good ideas together, 5 good ideas together and make one comic so that there's always something happening and you can't get bored. Or if you decide you don't like that character's story, there's still these other 3 characters that are very interesting, so you don't just bet everything on one idea, you know. Um, and that's how I did Strangers in Paradise. I took every good idea I had at the time. I started the series, and for the next 10 or 11 years, every good idea I got, I didn't save it for a different story later. I put it into this one. So Strangers really just goes all over the place. Like these people have super interesting lives because things happen. Um, I don't just say, oh, they went to college and became an accountant and that was it. Everything else happened at the dinner table. No, this stuff just goes, stuff and stuff's happening all the time. And um, it pretends like it's set in domestic America, but it's really not. It's anything but domestic. So, yeah, I still get excited thinking about it. It was
What's the
fun.
example of a good idea that you used?
I'll tell you one. Um, it started with a news event that happened in the 60s, and I had heard about it. Um, Back in like the James Bond era, 1960s, when everybody was spies and it was glamorous. There was a news article that came out and it was true, and it happened in London
Mhm.
that a British House of Lords, some guy,
Mhm.
had a mistress. And he, you know, his bedroom talk to his mistress. They would talk about his day and what had happened in Parliament, and he would complain or tell her what's going on. And it turns out, after about over a year of this relationship, turns out she's a Russian spy. And and she was telling everything right to the Kremlin and all that. And it was a huge scandal. I think her name was Christine Keeler, and she became quite famous
Mhm.
because of it. And that stuck with me. And I kind of got this idea that that bedroom talk is a great way to find out what's really happening in a government or at a company or whatever, and that you can do more damage um, that way than getting an army to invade the place, you
Mhm.
know? So I had this idea that what if there was a group called the Parker Girls, and this is from Strangers in Paradise.
Mhm.
There's a group called the Parker Girls, and they were led by a lady called Darcy Parker. And she had these girls that looked like they were just fun girlfriends, but they were super intelligent, uh, deadly agents who knew how to get with people and get people to trust them. And then they would be able, Darcy and the group would be able to manipulate these people and get what they wanted to. And when I describe targets, I think of people like the billionaires, the guy, the guys that we really want to get in there
Yeah.
and get our hands on what they're doing. That kind of stuff. This is not about somebody who owns a grocery store. This is about, these big power people. Uh, those people that are in Rolls Royces and stuff like that. So I was kind of intrigued by that. And so I took that British Parliament scandal and kind of turned it into something that was happening in LA. And they were the Parker girls. And that's why they all had a tattoo, a little Lily tattoo
Mhm.
that would identify them as a Parker girl. Um, and um, sometimes you'll see it on the book or in the pages.
So,
So
what did the Parker girls want from those billionaires? Money?
no, when you have a lot of money, you don't care about more of it. What they want is power.
Mm.
Um, Darcy Parker was rich already, and because of a criminal empire. So what she wanted from these people was to manipulate enemies and manipulate. Um, she didn't care about manipulating the government. People like her and Warren Buffett, they're fine whether the government is good or bad. But it was all about manipulating people that are doing things like some billionaire that is controlling all of the imports of this, and that affects Darcy. So Darcy wants to change that. Things like that, things that normally you might use law enforcement or legislation to go after. Some
Mhm.
people are impatient. They don't have time for that.
She's like trying to get through the back door while everyone else is like, you know, getting to the front door.
Well, she just kind of gets the power from the inside. It's like having somebody you trust betray you, and then you find out, oh, they're a Parker girl.
Mhm.
I've been with that person 3 years. I'm married to that person, and turns out it's a Parker girl. And I used to own Exxon or whatever,
Mhm.
and now Exxon's in a lot of trouble, and I'm being leveraged. And it turns out that the wife who I can't find anymore, she's disappeared, was a Parker girl. And everything I told her went to Darcy Parker and was part of a big move and all that. So
You used to work for X?
no, no, I was saying Exxon, the
Oh,
oil company,
Exxon.
just as an example.
Okay, 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 okay. So you said you used to be a musician, right?
Mhm.
What was the turning point that made you want to choose? from musician to where you are right now?
The turning point was I had a kid. And once you have a baby, I felt really responsible for her. And I was stuck in city club bands, just working the clubs around town.
Mhm.
And we were a copy band. We played um, the top, the popular music. Yeah, so that kind of band has no future. And you have to be an original band to have any kind of future. So I knew that I had to provide better for her. And my dad was a TV director, had a company. And so I quit the bar life, the bar bands, and went to work for my dad and became an editor, TV editor.
TV editor?
hmm
And
And
ha
I did that for 10 years. That's what I did in my like 20s to about early 30s was a TV editor.
wow, so you had a kid really young. And you're,
Yes, we were teenagers.
oh my God.
Yeah, we started dating in high school, and by the time we were 19 or 20, we were married and had a baby.
Oh my God, that's like younger than me. Oh my God, that's crazy. That is
hmm
insane. Wow, young love, you know.
hmm And it's the love of my life. I fell in love the minute I saw her in high school, walking down the hall, and I still feel that way every day.
That's so adorable.
I know.
You know, my sister and her boyfriend are kind of like that right now. They met, I think they were 16 and 15, and he was like, "Oh, I just thought she was pretty." And I was like, "Wow, jealous." That's crazy. So,
Sometimes young people feel way more than that, but they don't know how to say it. So all they can say is, "You're beautiful." But what they mean is so much more. And as they get older, they're better expressing that.
so how would you express how you see your wife right now then?
That's a good question, Sophia. Um, I see her as a walking miracle. It's just a fantastic human being. And even if you think about philosophical stuff like, oh my God, we're just a rock spinning in the universe around another hot rock. It's still amazing that Robin is here. My wife is here on this rock with me, and I get to spend every day with her. It's bloody cool.
That's so cute. What would you say is like the aspects of your wife that you think is like a miracle too?
She's so smart, and everybody that knows Robin knows she is smart, and she takes no crap off anybody. And why in the why in the world she puts up with a cartoonist fool like me, I have no idea. So that is a mystery that I'll take with me to my grave. How this incredibly smart woman who has her act together chose a musician who turned into a cartoonist. That's mystery.
So how do you go from being a video editor to becoming a cartoonist?
Um, because I got tired of working on other people's stuff. And at night, I was drawing and cartooning and doing all these comic strips, trying to find a way to do something with my art. I had already tried music and it didn't work. And I only had one other thing I can really good at, and that was art. And I thought, what can I do with it? I don't want to be just having a day job working for other people, cutting TV commercials and documentaries. Um, So I began cartooning, and then I saw the self-publishing movement happening in comics back in the 90s.
Mhm.
Uh, Jeff Smith and Cerebus and all that. There were a lot of people doing it. And I went to a signing in my town of Houston and met Jeff Smith and talked to him and asked him about it. And we kind of hit it off, and the store took him to dinner that night at a Mexican food place, and they invited me to go with him. So I sat next to Jeff and I just asked him a million questions. How do you do it? How does it work? Well, how do you make the book? Where do you print it? How does it get to the store? All that. And he answered every question. And I came home and told Robin, I think I could do it. I think I get it. I think I see how it works. And
Mm-hmm.
all I have to do is come up with a story. And I've been doing stories my whole life, in my notebooks. So I was very motivated and I dived in and I put in the work. And after about 4 months, I had the very first issue in Xerox form. So I had 30 pages stapled together in a Xerox comic, just one sheets.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it over to a convention that happened in town and showed it to every retailer and said, hey, if this was a comic book, would you order it for your store? And they flipped through it and said, yeah, I would. So everybody said that. And that was the first issue of Strangers in Paradise I was showing them. Um, and so after that, I had a lot of confidence. I thought, here we go. This is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people that saw it and offered me uh, a publishing offer was Antarctic Press, a small publisher in Texas. They said, we'll do a mini series for you if you want to do 3 issues. If you think you can do a second one. A lot of people can do the first issue, not everybody can do the second one. And I said, yeah, sure, you bet. So I did it. And by the time the first issue came out, I was halfway through the second issue. I knew I was going to make it. And then I did a third issue, and that was the miniseries that started my whole series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'll tell you this, here's why I self-published all these years. I spent a year with Antarctic Press, and we did 3 comics and collected them into a trade paperback. So they sold 3 comics in a trade paperback, and at the end of the year, all the money I made was $1,800 for a year's work. And I
Mm.
thought, okay, that's not a career, that's a hobby.
Yeah.
I would do better with a lemonade stand. Um, so I go back to what Jeff was saying, and now I get serious about self-publishing. And from that point on, I self-published.
Mm-hmm.
And um, the very first issue of the self-published stuff was like it worked. I made the money that I needed to survive every month, and eventually it was good enough and regular enough that I could quit the day job editing. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a cartoonist, and all I do is comic books and comic book shows. Didn't take very long to transition, but it took about a year and a half.
How did you basically get self-publishing to work? Because I know a lot of self-publishers, but not all of them can make a lot of people read their stuff or
I
get a lot of
know.
enough
It
money
was,
to sustain themselves.
I think honestly, it was easier in the 90s because there were about 16 or 17 distributors, book distributors that worked the comic book industry. So I got every one of those distributors to carry my book, and they all have their little pockets of market. That distributor did all of Canada. These 15 do all of America. That guy specializes in the East Coast. That guy's the Northwest. That's how it worked. And they all carried my book. So that's how the book got to the stores. The way that the stores knew about the book was because all these guys had order catalogs, old-fashioned order catalogs. And they would send them out every month, and people would click off what they want to order. There were also a lot of magazines that were about the comic book industry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when you got articles in there or reviews, everybody saw it because there were probably maybe 4 or 5 major magazines that everybody read. And this was before these websites. This was the 90s. So the magazine was your info. And so it was a lot easier to get your own info out that way because it was more focused. You read the magazine to find out when your next issue of Spawn is coming out or whatever.
Yeah.
And there would be a little ad for me. And so I got the view. It's totally different now. There are no magazines there, and technically right now there are no distributors.
Mm.
Uh, so I think the business model right now is people are trying to get big followings online and then hope that that following shows up at a Kickstarter and buys their book.
That's what I'm
And
trying
I'm doing it too.
to. Do you ever, I mean, I'm sure you did. You read comics books growing up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I loved them.
What kind of comics book did you read?
I started reading comics, and as soon as they taught me how to read, which was probably what, ninth grade? I
Ninth
was,
grade?
I don't know, whenever it was back then, first grade, second grade, third grade. And you could get kid comics, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved them. I started with kid comics and Peanuts and everything. I
Mm-hmm.
loved all the kid stuff. And then as you get to where you're preteen, teenager, and you're reading superheroes and everything else. Um, so I loved all that. I loved all the mainstream guys. And then when I got into high school, alternative, no, they called them underground cartoonists. Underground comics started showing up. Underground was what they called indie comics way back in the hippie days
Mm-hmm.
of 60s and 70s. That's where Robert Crumb showed up and Dennis Kitchen and those guys that would draw about getting high and hallucinations and stick it to the man and revolt, uh, do your own thing, man, because the government is leading you nowhere, that kind of stuff. That
Mm-hmm.
was the same place where all that music comes from, like Jefferson Airplane and The Doors, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Like check out, man, do your own thing. Well, there was a cartoonist movement doing the same thing, and a lot of very popular cartoonists that had were popular among the kid culture of that time. So I discovered those guys, and they still influence me to this day because a lot of those guys were wonderful with a pen, and they would do elaborate pen drawings. So they might be drawing something silly like a an old man hitchhiking in the desert who eats a mushroom, and suddenly he's having hallucination dreams. That would the kind of thing you would find in one of those comics. But the dream would be beautifully rendered in pen and ink. And somebody had spent, days and days and weeks drawing these pages. So it wasn't just crap that they were just, throwing out. It was a work of love for all
Mm-hmm.
these cartoons. It was very inspiring to anybody that liked to draw. And very inspiring to very easy to influence teenage artists.
I like to go back and forth in comic books because I always admire the drawings, the intricacy especially, you know?
One thing I learned to do in making comics is always put in what I call Easter eggs because I tried to draw stories that would give you a strong moment and you enjoyed it. And like a movie, you might want to go back and watch that scene again or read that comic again.
Yeah.
And so I put things in there for you to find the second and third time that you wouldn't have seen the first time. In the first time you read a comic, you tend to watch the people in the foreground, the characters and what they're saying and how they're treating each other. And a lot of times in the background or on the table or in the furniture or in somewhere, you can hide things that were subliminally influencing you um, to think this is tense or this is sweet or we're not safe or this is good. And you can set the room just like you would set lighting, you know, or like a camera thing. And you can do the same thing in drawing, where you can do that and then hide little objects in there that are emblems or symbols that you can look at later and go, oh my God, that I saw that in the living room and now it's on that person's dossier. And oh, geez, what does that mean? So I like to do things like that so that you have a subplot story in there for people that know where to look for it and how to find it and put it together. And it was really great to see people read an issue and then write letters or post about it later and say, did you notice? Da 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 da. I like that.
Do you have an example of that? Like an Easter egg that you put in?
I would have to look through the book because I did it every single issue. Um, for instance, I told you about the Parker Lily, the little
Mhm.
tattoo. that the Parker girls have? Well, maybe when you're looking at them in the foreground, there's a Parker girl that hasn't the person they're talking to doesn't know yet. They're talking to a Parker girl. Usually you find out when it's too late. But maybe in the background, there may be something reflective in the background, and in the reflection, you can see the tattoo on the back of their leg. That kind of thing, you know. So if you know what to look for, you're seeing things on the table or on the magazine cover or on the
Mhm.
bookshelf in the background, or, the way the third character is looking at the first character, the one who's not involved in the conversation.
Mhm.
So I like that idea of, if you were directing a movie and you had four people on screen, only two are talking at a time, what do you do with the other two? Well, you do something with them that enforces the point, whether it's what they're talking about, which may be not the point, or it's the bigger picture point. So you use the background and the other characters to emphasize what is the really the point that we're trying to get here. If if all I'm trying to do is, say, for instance, scare you to death,
Mhm.
then those other characters are my chance to get something in there that is so unsettling. Have them doing something or seeing something or holding something you don't want to see, whatever. So you just have to think that way, like a director, you know.
Mhm.
How can I make my room look sweet and inviting? How can I make my room look creepy? And you kind of do that with every panel.
I kind of did that for with this podcast. 'Cause I was like, oh, how can I make my room kind of interesting? And I don't know if you noticed, but it's like I guess little Easter eggs. Like there's like Darth Vader right here, and like Kyle.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
I, is that Kyle's dad behind him?
No, it's actually I don't know if you've ever played Detroit Become Human, but it's Connor from Detroit Become Human. Ah,
Oh no,
and
I
Kyle
don't
just
know
fell.
that one.
Oh, and they both fell.
Kyle has fallen down a lot. He can take it.
Yeah. And I also had a Gohan from Dragon Ball, but he flops around. So he's not very stable. But he'll be here for today because Connor fell. So I just hit my head. But
The only,
anyway,
the only doll I have in here is on my wife's Robin's desk, and she's got a really cute little Totoro,
that's
uh,
so
little
cute.
plush like beanbag Totoro. Very
I have a
cute.
big Totoro with a zipper on the back. And then if you unzip it, there's a big fat, there's like a rolled up blanket of Totoro in it. And you can unroll it. So you can have a blanket and then like sleep. It's for,
That would be good for an airplane ride, a long airplane.
yeah. Especially my sister uses it for long car rides.
There
Like
you
she'd be
go.
like,
Yeah, exactly. You got
she's
to
like, how
blanket
long
it.
is the car ride? And then she's like, my mom's like half an hour, and she's like, okay, wait 1 second, let me bring my Totoro so I can sleep in the car. So, yeah, it's really cute. Do you think you have any pet peeves when you watch films or read comics, like other stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do.
What are
Um,
they?
um, okay. I hate how we don't know anything about Batman. We don't really know anything about him. Um, I mean, what's his favorite color? What does he like to eat? How many times a year does he go to the doctor, and what does his health report look like? I mean, what does his EKG looks like? The guy he's walking around with about 75,000 pounds of muscles on him. That's really bad for your body. Um, we just don't know anything about him. I don't like characters that are just, um, he's not much beyond the costume. Where's the
Hmm.
human being in there? And that's what I liked about early Peter Parker. In the beginning of Spider-Man, he was a kid going to high school, and we went to class with him, and we saw him get picked on, and we saw him carrying a lunch tray, so we know he ate something once in a while. I mean, you got to see him do that. He had a bedroom. Then the first week he had his powers, he was walking on a ceiling in his socks, like any teenager would. Try it out. All that kind of real human stuff made him so real, you
Hmm.
know? And then that early batch of creators that have a grounded character, they run their course and they're replaced by second, third, and fourth and fifth generation. By the time you get to the other later generations, all they see is a uniform. He just shows up when there's trouble and, you know, pretends to have a marriage, pretends to have a life, but he doesn't, you know. He's mostly just out there over Manhattan swinging around in his jammies. So,
Yeah.
so I
Okay.
like it when people have a life.
I do like his version in Injustice. Do you know what Injustice is?
No,
Okay, let me explain it to you. So, it's like a what if situation. It's
yes.
what if Superman turned bad. And basically in this version of Justice League, uh Superman decides that all the villains, instead of like saving them, okay, I'll tell you from the beginning. So basically, Joker is let go by Batman every single time, right? He never kills Joker.
Oh, I have a whole other rant about that. Yeah.
So because of that, Joker explodes Metropolis and kills Superman's pregnant wife, Lois. And that causes Superman to kill Joker, and he decide that instead of letting villains go, he's just going to kill all of them. And then Batman goes, "No, we shouldn't kill them. They shouldn't die." And then because of that, his son also goes, "I agree with Superman. Why are you not killing these villains?" And then you see this quarrel between him and his sons. And that's also like one son's with him, one son's against him, but the other son's younger, so you see this like family quarrel, and you also see him interacting with Harley Quinn and not Batman, and Catwoman, and you see more of the side of Batman, like his more family interpersonal side. And I think his butler's dead too, so he doesn't know how to deal with that. So he's in a completely different dynamic. So I thought that was more relatable than normal Batman.
When they were having their arguments, where was that happening?
I think it was happening in his Batcave.
And they were in costume with their cows down?
Uh, he took his costume off. Okay, he took his costume off when he I think this is a bit of a spoiler, but I think when he accidentally killed his son in a fight and he took it off after and he was like apologizing. So in that scene he wasn't wearing it, but up to that moment he was wearing it.
Yeah. Well, I stick to my point there. I would have rewritten all that.
How would have you written it?
Um, I would give him a life out of uniform. And because there's got to be a human being. If you're not a human being, because my point is, if he's nothing but the soldier,
Mhm.
okay, that's fine, but you're just a soldier, and that's one aspect. And right now, you could be good or bad. And how do I know which one to care about beyond just like, oh, we're all for good? Well, even the bad side thinks they're on the side of good. So
Mhm.
it's arbitrary. How do you prove which side we should empathize with? And the thing that I really tried to remember is that if I don't care about the character, I don't care what they do. Like
Mhm.
for instance, I don't care what Green Goblin does because I don't care about Green Goblin. That guy has no life either. All I ever see him, the only time I've ever seen Harry Osborn or whatever, Norm Osborn, was either in the office or in uniform.
Yeah.
So he's either Warren Buffett or he's Green Goblin, and I have nothing else to hold on to. If if this was going to be a movie starring Robert De Niro or Al Pacino or somebody that was really great,
Mhm.
he would have a whole life. We would go to his house and meet his wife and the kids, and we find out he's got all kinds of stuff that all of us would fight for. Maybe the wife has cancer and the kids are drifting away, and blah 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 blah. All kinds of things. All kinds of things you can do that are human. And then when he goes out and fights Spider-Man, you're thinking, you know, Green Goblin's kind of got a point there. Maybe you should go easy on him, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you need to make it more confusing. It's not black and white. And I see a lot of DC stories where it's like the gods of good and the gods of evil stand on a battleground and have a arbitrary debate, and then they clash, like it's Trojan War. Um, but I like it better when they're human beings and it's complicated. Don't be so
Hmm.
quick to judge. I mean, some of our most favorite movie villains had lots of reasons to be angry, upset, and then they crossed the line. But all of us could relate to the thing that got them to that point, and then they snapped, and then, okay, now you're on your own. I'm not going to go do crazy, evil things.
Hmm.
But yeah, that would have been a tough life. So I like those kind of stories that are a little more complicated.
You know what? I just thought of another version of Batman that I think you actually would like, the Telltale version. You know Telltale games?
No,
So
I
Telltale
don't do any gaming. Is it gaming?
no. Don't worry. It's kind of like I'll explain. It's ba literally like a movie, but you make the choices. That's how I describe it. So a film's playing and you make the choices. That's how I describe it. It is not like a running around role RPG kind of game. It's a very story-based game. So why I think you'd like it is that Batman actually spends 90% of the time as Bruce Wayne. He doesn't actually spend much time as Batman. And in that version, he befriends Joker. Joker is crazy, but he still befriends him, and he tries his very best to not get Joker to become Joker. And he's at home, and he also doesn't like he spent time in his mansion with his butler, and he also has like a girlfriend, which is still the Catwoman lady, Catwoman, but without the mask on. And at the very end, he wears the mask a little bit, and I'm not sure if it's a spoiler. Depends on how you play the game. There's a lot of endings to it, but you could end up in the route where you try really hard to save Joker and you don't succeed, and that's when he has to wear the mask and fight Joker, and it's very like sad because they're supposed to be really good friends, right? And he
You
doesn't want to.
know, you know what would make it like a Greek tragedy?
How?
What is Joker's name, real name?
I think it was Joe. They just called him Joe, but they never actually called him the Joker in
Uh,
that version.
what if it was, what if his real name was Joseph Wayne? And what if Batman and Bruce were brothers? And that's what this has all been about. And that's why he won't, kill him or anything. And that's why Joker he won't stop him totally.
Hmm.
That's something that's been going on a long time. We watch this show every week called Ancestry, something where they dig into your DNA and ancestors.
Hmm.
And a good reporter in the Bruce Wayne Batman story would be able to find that somehow the DNA matches and these two are actually either half brothers or whatever. Um, so that would make all the fights even, that would explain why he's trying to save him and help him and all that. And then the only way to stop him is you can't stop him as Bruce, you have to stop him as Batman because he's crossed the line.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wonder
That
if
would
anybody ever talked about that at a meeting, a DC meeting.
You should like run in with a paper. I have an idea. Okay.
Well, no, what I would do is I would just use it myself.
I think maybe because I love film so much, the only play games I'd ever play were those types of games. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't like the fighting scene. Even there's a game called Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure if you heard of it. Have you heard of it
Hmm.
before?
Hmm.
And I don't like the fighting part. I go to the bathroom in the fighting part, and then the story comes back, and I'm like sitting down next to it and watching it like a film.
I've rewatched one of my favorite movies last night,
Mhm.
Heat. It's
Heat?
Heat. Yeah. It's a great gangster versus cop movie.
Mhm.
Um, it was with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. That's why they were in my brain when I said them. Um, but I've seen it before several times. And last night I watched it when I skipped past all the domestic stuff and went straight from fight to fight to fight because they had the best fights in the world. I've never seen any gangsters versus cop fights that were ever shot that good. The movie was made by what's his name, man, who's oh shoot, I forget his first name,
Mhm.
and he's a really great movie maker. It's really well done. But yeah, that I did the opposite there. I skipped all the relationship stuff and went from fight to fight.
That's
So I'm
so
still
funny.
a teenage boy at heart.
What did you like about the fight so much? Like, what was a cool scene? Could you like describe it?
What I liked was that it was so intense, and none of it ever looked like movie stuff. You learn how to look when people are throwing a punch at a stuntman and all that. This didn't look like any of that. The guy was so good at getting everything realistic. Um, but the thing that I've never seen before or since, ever in a movie, I love anything that I haven't seen before. If it's the first time, you got my full attention. But they rob a bank. Um, the bad guys rob a bank, and the cops are tipped off, and they're on their way with all their cars and blocking off all the other streets. The gangsters come out of the bank, and they get halfway into the car, and they suddenly see the cops. Every movie you've ever seen, you can imagine what they would do next. They'd get in the car, try to drive away, or pull out a pistol, or whatever, or grab a hostage. Nope. These guys suddenly went like totally Iraq War, Vietnam War, World War II, whatever. They were all carrying
Mhm.
military machine guns, and they pulled them out and they started machine gunning at the cop cars.
Oh wow.
And they attacked first. The gangsters shot first and were forcing everybody back. There was a lot of damage done right there in front of the bank. Then, as they get rid of they're working left and right flank like soldiers. They
Mhm.
get rid of the threat on the left and they get in the car and try to race up the street into the right flank. And just like a million jillion cops are shooting and they're all got shotguns and machine guns. The car crashes and there's a jillion cops and these guys get out and start running and one guy will run up ahead and start spraying fire and say go, and the guys behind him go up and get to the next car and then they start spraying. The guy behind him goes up and runs undercover, and they were doing it just like military operations, how you work your way up a street.
Mhm.
I've never seen that before in a movie. That's how they train you to get through a town in war, and that's what they were doing on the street in this stuff. The amount of damage they did on an LA street back when you could shoot on LA streets. They also shot a scene at the airport, which you can't do anymore,
Mhm.
with planes landing over the actors and all that. Um, so I don't know. It's pretty, man, it was cool. It was really, really a great accomplishment in filmmaking. The battle. I've never seen anything like it before or since. It's the only true gunfight I've ever seen that
Mhm.
looked real on film.
How do you feel about Jackie Chan movies?
I think they're very entertaining. He's a very charismatic guy, and his movies were fun, and he had a great sense of humor, and he had super fast feet. Um, so he and Bruce Lee had very fast feet. Didn't even see it coming. I love that. I loved watching them.
Hmm.
I watched him first, and then Bruce Lee showed up. No, Bruce Lee was first, then Jackie Chan, and then Jet Li, and then
Hmm.
Jet Li was like incredibly fast, and so yeah, I liked all that.
I watched that scene where Jackie Chan, it's a movie where Jackie Chan's a policeman. I don't know if you watched it. And there's a scene where he grabs onto light, like a string of lights, kind of like Christmas lights. And as he goes down, everything just zaps, you know? My God, apparently that wasn't like supposed to happen. Like all the lights fall turning off and everything and sparking everywhere. That was by accident, and he got really, really injured from that.
Oh
But
no.
they kept that scene. And I remember every time see it, I wince because I'm like, I know that's real. Like he is in a lot of pain. His hands are burning when he's going down.
Yeah,
And like even all the glass scenes, he smashes through like layers of glass. So one layer of that glass, it's still tempered glass and it's fake, but a lot of it, it's still damaging. So apparently, like a lot of all the actors at least broke at least one bone during the shoot.
good
And I'm like,
Lord.
there's no way they can do that today. 'Cause he,
No, and I remember that about all those movies with Jackie Chan and Jet Li. They all were saying things like that. Chuck Norris.
mm,
They all. It was a lot of contact. But you can't avoid it at some point.
but it looked so good. But man, I'm just very shocked that that has to be from dedication and passion. There's no way you can do
Well,
that
and
anymore.
they would just think about it. They probably spent 2 days setting that up. And then when you finally shoot it in the camera, they're so determined to finish the shot. And they know if something goes wrong, power through, power through. I'm sure they have that mindset. It takes so long to set something up, a shot like that, you know. You can't do it again. Sometimes you can't do it again. I was thinking about, like that movie I watched last night. I was
Mm,
saying they shot at the airport. They shot at the airport at night in LA, LAX, and the planes are coming in, and these guys are out in the field near the runways, and they're getting these airplane light, the commercial airplanes are lights are coming in and lighting up the field as these two guys are hunting each other.
mm.
And that was the drama of several times that happened. And you can't shoot that anymore. Now you would go do CGI, and we can see CGI. You can tell, or AI, which is even worse. Back then, they actually got a camera out in the field at LAX, and they really did it. Yay! Thank you.
What's your thoughts on AI?
I hate it. I hate what's become of it. It was a brilliant origin, and the AI was conceived and developed to do serious computer work for physics and medicine. Um, the first time I ever heard of AI, it was in AI computing, and what they had done was given it the task of plotting the new launch to the moon, to launch another big deal American launch to the moon and land with people,
Mm,
not just a satellite. And the next time we send somebody out there, they're going to do it different than the first time they went. They're going to, in the 60s, they stayed in the toe of the moon
mm,
between the two. When they do it again, they're going to go out of the toe, way out into space, and then boomerang back in because it's much more fuel efficient and all that. But if you get out there and if there's any problems, you're screwed.
yes.
So it's very complicated to calculate it because it's not just what happens between the Earth and the Moon. It's every other celestial body around us and the sun and the gamma waves and all this other stuff. Everything affects you out there.
Hmm.
So it's super complicated. And they gave it to an AI computing system to calculate the route. And the AI computer, when they figured out the 60s launches, it took them 3 years to figure out those launches, the first launch. And the AI computer figured out the boomerang route in 3 minutes.
Wow.
I know it's huge deal. It's a big, huge deal. Now imagine taking that computer and take all your cancer data and give it
Mm,
to the computers and put them on cancer or put it on Alzheimer's
mm,
or all that other stuff that we desperately need, um, any of the physics problems or the global finance, which is super complicated. How do you get everybody to balance? Every big problem there is. That's what it was originally conceived for. The people that came up with it were thinking, this is going to help mankind so much.
mm.
So, cut to 2025, and when I go on to log on to a computer and I see that people are using it to make fake photographs, you know, I think, oh God, it's like giving a calculator to a monkey. we take these beautiful things and we treat them like we're monkeys who discovered something shiny in the woods. And we just like making little crap and putting our crap on it and just doing crap, ripping off artists and ripping off music. If you go onto YouTube and listen to any of that, here's 3 hours or 10 hours of beautiful music while you look at a pond. And you notice that the music is really wandless, wanders, wandering aimlessly
Mhm,
and it's not going anywhere. That's AI taking, you know, what it thinks is calm music and feeding you, just feeding it to you until you're nauseous.
mhm.
Same thing with that waterfall that looks fake and just keeps running for 10 hours. That's the kind of crap that, the bottom feeders do with it. It was invented to get us to the moon and fix cancer. And now it's in the hands of everybody who wants to make you know, a satire video, a meme. I
Mhm.
really hate to see that. That's my little rant.
I agree with you on that.
So I'm a fan of AI in the sciences. I don't want it anywhere near the arts. Keep it away from arts and music.
I mean, art is literally supposed to be made by people, like expression by people. Why is a robot making it?
You know what a robot is? Remember this? Look how this all comes back. I learned a big lesson when I was in that band in my 20s
Mhm,
that what we did was we played all the hits. And so we're basically a copy band, which is about as glamorous as being a Elvis imitator.
mhm,
You know, Elvis was cool. Elvis impersonators are a joke. Stevie Ray Vaughan was cool. Guys who dress and play like Stevie Ray Vaughan are a joke. We already have Stevie. We don't need a copy. So that's how it is in music. The original guy gets to be huge, and then 10 million people want to be like that. No, you have to be another original somehow. Um, and it's the same in the comics. It's the same in art. It's the same in music. Um, so when I got to comics, I was
mhm,
thinking, and I don't want to work on other people's stuff. I don't want to draw and fix Batman stories.
mhm.
Um, I want to make my own stories, and I think I'll last longer that way. Because if I go to work for DC, I'm just a musician in a copy band. I have no future.
You know what? I felt the exact same way. And I don't know if this is a smart idea. I know it's only been like 2 years, so I don't know yet. We'll see. But I didn't go to university for that exact reason. Because I was like, okay, what's gonna happen when I get a degree? What am I gonna use it for? To make someone else's stories? I don't want that. Why don't I just start right now by myself with the money that I was gonna use to go to university?
Well, it's strange. You do need an apprenticeship era. Um, it helps. Now, some
Mm-hmm.
people just they are who they are from day one, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at people like uh, people who painted abstract, um, and then you look at their early career, they were painting fine art, traditional art. Like Picasso was a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful painter in the traditional sense when he was young. And it was by learning what all those other guys and what ladies were doing that he realized, okay, I figured out what you're doing. I know what you guys are doing. Now I'm going to go over here and do my own thing. I take what I've learned from you. I'm going to go over here and do my thing. The That way he knows what it is not to repeat. He knows what's
Mm-hmm.
original is what is a copy. If you never learn from who came before you and stand on the shoulders of great people who came before you, you're doomed to repeat what they did and think it's your own. And I see that in a lot of music today and comics where somebody is young, they've been making music for 5 years, they figured out, 25 chords, and then they come up with a melody. What they love it because they came up with it and they put their words to it. What they don't know is I've heard 35 songs just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had listened to all that great music that came before them, and get an idea of what is jazz, what is 60s pop, what is 70s pop, what is metal, what is hip hop. Get an idea of it in your head so that oh wow, I just kind of thought of this cool thing called rap. Whoa, whoa,
Mhm.
whoa, somebody's already done that. Somebody's already done that. Um, you need to know, whose shoulders you're standing on. It's really good to know. So it's good to read all that stuff and look at all that art and then try it. See what it's like to draw Picasso. See what it's like to draw Mary Cassatt or do an abstract or see what it's like to draw a comic book. See what it's like to paint a miniature duck on a piece of rock. Try all that. And it actually helps spur the original ideas.
Mhm.
Like we talk about Batman, we're talking about something unoriginal, but we come up with original thoughts while we're talking about it. That's how it
Yeah.
works.
Mhm.
And although making Joker his half brother is not very original. I mean, that's only in about 25 movies we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, but it's the execution, not the results anyway. It's like the beat. Because I feel like
You're
every
right.
person's story is
You're right.
different.
It's how you it's the turns you take with it.
Mhm.
Like we could give you three tropes. Here are three story tropes. Now make it interesting to read. And you know that if we're reading anything familiar, we'll zone out. And we'll just kind of like be half attention until we get to something unfamiliar, and then we stop and pay full attention and read the unfamiliar parts. That's how you try to write.
Mhm.
I know I need to get you to the bus stop, but I can get you there a very interesting way.
Like, how about instead of going on a bicycle, you go on a duck? Big duck gang.
Yeah. And now you and the duck go way back, and there's a whole other rabbit hole you can go down. I'm very
Exactly.
close to this duck. Do not mess with my duck. Suddenly, the duck
And
is very important in the story. To hell with the
mhm.
bus stop. It's all about the duck.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the creative process.
What do you keep in mind when you write stuff? Like, oh, I need to make sure to add this, something like that.
You know what? I think a lot of, because I come from an editing background, I know how to work on paper and in panels, but I
Mhm.
think of story like a writer. And then when I think about how I'm going to storyboard it, I think like a film.
I
So
do
I
that
think
too.
of it like, how do we open? Where's the camera going? What do I want you to see? You know, and then, when it gets to like two people talking, I'm thinking like a director. How long is this appropriate? And when do I need the response shot? And how do I do timing so that you get that quiet beat and then get the response and make it works? So
Mhm.
you think like that, and I put together everything I learned in cartooning books and film to make all that work. So I think it's really good that we are all pop culture people now, that
Mhm.
you've seen a lot of movies, you've seen a lot of screen stories, you've seen a lot of paper stories, digital stories. It all works. You use everything you know to make it as original as possible. My books, you can take a book that's 500 pages long and flip through it, and every page is different. And because I'm so afraid of boring the reader with ADD, and they need something constantly to be fresh. So it has to be either be in what they're looking at or in what they're saying, what's being said.
Mhm.
And so I have two options there, and I use them as best I can. And then whether it's drawn well or not is just me trying to get that to work as well as I can.
Oh yeah, I noticed that there was like one 2 page like just like kind of like a novel in the very beginning. Why was that in the book?
It was originally in there because I wanted that information in the story, but it was going to be boring to look at in art. And because I'd already started putting in music and song lyrics and poetry, I thought, why not cut to this as if there is Strangers in Paradise as a novel? And here's page 312 of the novel. And here's what the novel reads like. and now we're going back to the comic book version. And then there's this whole all this music that they listen to that's actually my old original music, my songs. And so that's the soundtrack for it, you know. And I still want to someday make the soundtrack for it. I have to be less busy than I am now to do it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just always saw Strangers in Paradise as multimedia. Back when I started it, it wasn't like the day today. Multimedia back then was, oh, you have a soundtrack and maybe you have a slideshow. But yeah, I see it now as where it could be on the screen or it could be in your ears or a multi-choice game, you know.
I feel like it would be a really good show.
It would be a good TV series because there are so many plots and there's so many. First off, the story itself is over 2,000 pages, so there's a lot to work with.
Hmm.
But there is a core group you can latch onto and bond with, and
Hmm.
then there's a lot going on around them. And I don't hammer the same thing every show, every book. It's a lot of variety, and also it's still timely. The whole point of the story still matters, which was, two people who are very different, but they fall in love. And the question that they have is, when do we get to live as if we belong here? That was the question in 1990s when I wrote that story, and it's still the main question today. Everybody is asking the same question. When do we get to live as if we belong here? When am I ever going to feel safe? When do I get to actually walk the earth as if it's okay for me to be here?
Did
And
that
that's the point of the story.
did that question come from like a personal experience of one of yours?
Yeah, it became because my first cousin Ben, who was 1 month older than me,
Hmm.
he was one of the first victims of AIDS when the AIDS epidemic hit back in the, like around 1980 or so. Um, so he was such a sweet guy,
Hmm.
really, really a wonderful guy. And he had been raised in Arkansas where he had no life, no understanding. And then he moved to San Francisco when it was a good place to be. They had a vibrant downtown. Today is San Francisco downtown is not very friendly, but back then it was still a beautiful place. And he had a great life, and he went to culinary school and became a baker. He wanted to be a baker and make pastries and all that, pastry chef. And he had just built his life up out there, and then he caught AIDS and was gone within 2 years. And it was so sad, and it took me several years to process that, think, that is so unfair. He never got to have a full life.
Hmm.
Um, and he spent most of his life as if he didn't belong here. He didn't fit in Arkansas in the small town and no acceptance and all that. So, you know, suddenly I began to see what gay people were talking about. It meant I began to really empathize and really see, I get it. Okay, I understand. I see what you're talking about now. And it inspired this story about um, what if I have a high school romance, but they're both female?
Hmm.
And I write the Kachu character just as if she's a young male actor that's, we would love in a movie. And it's the same thing. The dialogue is the same. It doesn't change. You know, I love you. Can't we work this out? When do we get a chance? Blah, blah, blah. The dialogue was the same. And I thought, geez, this works. This is what. So I began putting it in the story and I began putting the book out there in the 1990s when there wasn't a lot of support for gay issues. The gay issue was still like, there was still a lot of culture out there that was belittling and ridiculing and all that. And the gay movement was just starting to bond and all that. And suddenly I had a lot of sympathy. I was, saying, yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is a problem. Yeah.
Hmm.
And here's the story. Here's a story about two people. And by putting the story out there, a lot of other straight people read it and said, "Oh, I see." And I think it affected them as well. And they began to lighten up. But um, and then but the most rewarding thing was when I heard from gay readers who would write in and say, "Thank you, thank you for telling this story. I'm glad to find it." And it helped me get through high school to know that, there is something after high school,
Mhm.
get through this. It can work out. So I'm glad I did it. I'm glad
That's
that was my first book and not some action-packed gangster movie.
so would you say you're more inclined to write about, I guess, drama, like life stories?
No, I really mix it up. The older I get, um, the harder it is to laugh, but I'm still a goofball inside. There's still
Mhm.
like the 17-year-old irreverent kid in me that still laughs at Kyle and Cartman. Um, I still think that's funny. I
Yeah.
just don't see enough of it anymore. So I write about the drama that we are dealing with, but I put the humor in there to show hope.
Mhm.
You know, we can turn this corner.
That's funny because I feel like I do actually. I remember there was like a prompt question like describe yourself, your dark your was it your shadow self, you know? Like how you describe yourself. And I think the first word I wrote was goofy for some reason.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but when I write my stories, they're like nowhere near. Like I would never write a comedy. It's always something I try to make it as emotional as possible. Like I try to write a script that makes me cry. Like other people might not cry when they're reading it, but I cried when I wrote it, and I think that means that it's good because it evoked emotion from me, and I wrote it. If that means.
What I found in my writing was that if I broadcast it too much,
Mm.
if I come in heavy and stay heavy, the readers start putting their guard up. They start preparing, and it's harder to get them. But if disarm the reader, that's that word, disarm, um, like with start lighter and then actually have something to smile about. And oh, that's funny. And then this is a sweet moment. And then I tell you, well, I got good news, bad news. The good news is I'm getting my cheeks back. The bad news is because I have cancer. That's how you do that. Instead of like starting the whole book off like at the cancer ward and the cancer thing and the cancer this and the cancer that and the cancer that. Oh, and now I got to go tell everybody I got cancer, blah, blah, blah. See, so when it hits, it catches you off guard. You don't have your defenses up. You're not ready. And
Mhm.
then it just hits you full force, whatever it is. When I said that about the cheekbones, that's a quote from David Bowie. He wrote a note. He made a phone call to his friend, and that's how he told him that he had cancer.
Mm. Oh my God.
So see how that stuck with me? I've never quoted that before, but I needed that in the story that I was telling you,
Mhm.
and it just popped into my head. And that's why it's really good for us to pay attention to all that stuff we see, because you never know what stays in your storage and comes up when you need it.
So,
That in turn. What's the best black and white thing you could think of? And that's what I came up with,
mhm.
you know.
That's kind of interesting because I read in a book because I like to when I'm drawing, my mind wanders, so I was like, might as well put something in it. So I would try to listen to, because I'm like thinking about, it's always so dumb. I always think about like food or something because that's because I'm drawing. Like I'm already doing something I love. I can't think about drawing when I'm drawing, so I'm just gonna think about something else and it's food. Anyways, so I tried to listen to books on like psychology because I feel like that helps me write better too. And also, I like psychology, and apparently people like to be insinuated. So when there's like small hints of something, you might think you forget and you might not care about it, but it'll probably affect your behavior later. Like,
Mm,
okay, it's like if you were driving, right, in the car and you hear radio about fried chicken, you're probably gonna forget about it. But then later you're like hungry, you're probably gonna think about fried chicken because you heard it earlier. So something like
hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And
You put the idea in somebody's head and let them finish the thought.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the secret to writing murder mysteries. Give the viewer, the reader, lots of candidates, possibilities, and let the reader think they got ahead of the detective. And then the detective comes back and, oh, they put more together than you thought about. And then the detective has a surprise answer that you didn't guess.
Hmm,
So, yeah,
hmm.
getting the reader or the viewer involved, letting them participate in the story by wondering about it, trying to piece it together, puzzle. You know, when we get hooked on a series and everybody starts chatting as fans, I think they're doing this. Where do you think they're going? All that. That's it. That's where you give them something to think about. Um, Um, I need to go. Is there anything we should talk about to
Oh,
wrap up?
okay, one last thing. What's one advice you give to the people watching this right? Like aspiring storytellers watching this right now?
Oh, absolutely. It's easy. The same thing for writers, songwriters, musicians, anything creative. Be yourself.
Hmm.
We don't have you. The world has never experienced you yet. You're the only one that is you. We already have everybody famous you can name and everything they've ever done. You can learn from it. Don't repeat it. Uh, Use it to launch something we've never seen before. And the only thing that we've never seen before is you. You are already an original. Just do your work. Just put whatever is you out there. If all you care about is art and food and South Park, put it together in a new way we've never seen. Because I would definitely watch that or read that or look at that. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
be yourself. Be yourself because you're the most original thing on the planet. Whatever comes out of you that is never heard before because you're the first time it was ever said,
Mhm.
you have our full attention. But if
Okay.
you say something I've heard 100 times, I'm out.
Snooze fast.
Fast forward.
And where can our awesome listeners find your work?
TerryMooreArt.com is
Click
my
on the
website.
description if I didn't forget. Well,
Yeah.
that's a wrap for today's episode of Podcast for Fun. Thank you so much, Terry, for joining us and sharing your incredible insights.
Thank you for having me, Sophia. It was fun.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow storytelling enthusiasts. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to explore, you can drop them in the comments or connect with me on any of my social medias at Podcast for Fun. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Podcast for Fun.